They laughed at my arm-sized Christmas tree and called my apartment a festive rat hole. I just poured more wine, smiled, and said, "Next year we'll open presents somewhere nicer." My parents thought I was joking. I started counting every invoice and every one of their size. By June, I sent the family group chat a photo house keys on marble countertop, city skyline in the background, penthouse. The following Christmas Eve, I showed them my little tree 4 meters tall, touching the glass ceiling. My name is Ava Whitaker, and I still have the photo from that Christmas, my mother's forced smile next to my tabletop tree, her Hermes scarf deliberately draped to avoid touching my IKEA couch. The tree cost $19.99 at CVS. I'd sprayed it with pine scent from a can, hoping nobody would notice the plastic needles. My studio in Riverside District measured exactly 450 square feet, though I told everyone it was almost 500. The kitchen alcove barely fit 2 people. The window faced a brick wall so close I could touch it if I opened the screen. Eleanor arrived first, her heels clicking disapproval before she even crossed the threshold. "Oh, Ava," she said, that particular sigh she'd perfected since I was 12. "You're still here." Richard followed, carrying a bottle of wine that cost more than my weekly groceries. He set it on my particle board table like he was afraid it might catch something. "Cozy," he said, the word dropping like ice into warm water. I'd spent 3 days preparing, scrubbed the baseboards, hidden the student loan statements behind the refrigerator, arranged 5 place settings on a tablecloth from Target, the creases still visible where I'd ironed them. The roast chicken sat in my toaster oven, the apartment's only cooking appliance besides a hot plate. "Something smells interesting," Eleanor said, her nose wrinkling. "Is that chicken mixed with paint?" "The building's renovating the hallway." I lied. The smell was actually my neighbor's weed mixing with my pine sol cleaning frenzy. They gathered around my tree, Eleanor's phone already out. "Everyone squeeze in," she chirped, her voice bright for the camera. "Christmas at Ava's." The photo went straight to the family group chat. I saw her typing underneath, "Making the best of it." The laughing emoji came from my cousin Janet within seconds. Then another from Aunt Patricia. My phone buzzed with their amusement while I carved the chicken with a knife that needed sharpening 6 months ago. "You know," Eleanor said, accepting her plate with fingertips only, "Caleb's mother told me he bought a 4-bedroom in Oakwood. Pool and everything." "Good for Caleb," I said. "He's still single." The meat was dry. I'd forgotten to baste it, distracted by trying to make my bathroom look less like a converted closet. Richard chewed slowly, the sound filling my studio like judgment. "How's the finance job?" he asked, though we both knew he meant, "How are you still living like this with a finance job?" "It's contract analysis, at Northbridge Capital Services." "Fancy title," Eleanor said. "For someone living in what do they call these efficiency apartments? Studio?" It was a studio. I'd corrected her 5 times this year alone. My phone lit up with more notifications. The family chat had evolved into a thread of everyone's Christmas setups. Janet's colonial with the 2-story foyer, Patricia's cabin with the stone fireplace, and there, getting laughing reactions, my pitiful tree barely visible between my parents' shoulders. "We should go," Eleanor announced at 7:45, though I'd told them dinner was at 6. Traffic. They left the wine Richard brought. "For next time," he said, though we all knew there wouldn't be a next time. Not here. After they gone. I stood at my window, looking at the brick wall. Somebody had graffitied it last month, "Dream Bigger," in green spray paint. I pulled up the photo Eleanor posted. 63 reactions now, 12 comments. My favorite, bless her heart, trying so hard. I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. Column A, current reality. Column B, 12-month target. At the top, in bold, I typed operation square footage. "Next year," I said to the brick wall, to the graffiti artist's command, to the ghost of my dignity. "Next year, you'll choke on your champagne." I poured Richard's expensive wine into my chipped mug and started calculating exactly what it would take to buy silence. Not just any silence, the kind that comes with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view that makes small people smaller. The wine tasted like possibility. Or maybe revenge. At that point, they tasted the same. The spreadsheet became my religion. Every morning at 5:30, before the radiator started its death rattle, I'd update the numbers. Student loans, 68,000 remaining. Savings, 3,200. Monthly take-home, 4,800. Bonus potential question mark. I taped a photo to my laptop screen, a penthouse from Architectural Digest, all glass and steel and silence. Below it, a sticky note, square footage, silence. The equation that would solve everything. My phone rang while I was recalculating my debt-to-income ratio for the 100th time. Eleanor. Did you see Janet's announcement she's pregnant? Third baby. Good for Janet. You know what this means for you? I knew. The last unmarried, childless daughter. The family project. Maybe if you moved somewhere nicer, Eleanor continued, you'd meet someone. Men don't want to date women who live like college students. I'm 32. Mom? Exactly my point. After she hung up, I opened LinkedIn instead of crying, scrolled through job postings, side hustles, anything that paid. A listing caught my eye. Risk analysis consultant needed, project basis. I had the skills. More importantly, I had the anger. I registered an LLC that night, Whitaker Risk Solutions. Cost me $200 I didn't have, but it sounded expensive. Sounded like someone who didn't live in 450 square feet of shame. The opportunity came 3 weeks later, disguised as a mind-numbing department meeting. I was half listening to our director drone about quarterly projections when someone mentioned the Hawthorne Growth Group pitch. They're looking at Argent Bio, my colleague Taryn whispered. 40 million acquisition. I knew Argent Bio. I'd reviewed their contracts 6 months ago for a different deal that fell through. There was something wrong with their licensing agreements, a gap in the IP assignments that could destroy the whole valuation. I want in on that team, I said, louder than intended. Miles Davenport, my direct supervisor, raised an eyebrow. That's senior level, Whitaker. I've reviewed Argent Bio before. I know their contract structure. You know their old contract structure, he corrected. But I saw his hesitation. Miles was smart enough to know that prior knowledge was valuable, even from someone who lived in an apartment that smelled like other people's cooking. That night, I pulled my old Argent Bio files. The problem was still there, buried in subsection 12.3.4, a time bomb nobody else would notice until it exploded. I drafted a memo, 18 pages of pure ammunition. Eleanor called while I was proofreading at 2:15 in the morning. Are you awake? You sound tired. Working? On what? It's the middle of the night. On not living like a college student. Silence. Then, there's no need to be hostile. I'm only trying to help. I know exactly what you're trying to do. I hung up and kept typing. The memo needed to be perfect. Every citation, every cross-reference, every footnote that would make them realize I belonged at the table where $40 million deals got carved up. I submitted it at 6:23 in the morning, right before Miles got his coffee. The subject line, Critical Risk Assessment, Argent Bio Acquisition. By lunch, my phone had 3 missed calls from the executive floor. Whitaker. The managing director's voice was sharp through the speaker. Conference room A. Now. The walk to the elevator felt like swimming upstream. Taryn watched from her cubicle, already calculating how to take my desk if I got fired. But when I opened the conference room door, there was no firing squad, just the senior team, my memo projected on the screen, and $40 million hanging in the balance. Explain this, the managing director said, pointing to section 12.3.4. So I did. For 45 minutes, I dissected every weakness, every undefined term that could hemorrhage money, every place where Argent Bio's contracts were held together with hope instead of law. If we proceed without addressing these issues, I concluded, we're not buying a company, we're buying a lawsuit. The room was silent. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, God, those windows I could see the whole city. People living in boxes stacked on boxes. none of them knowing that I'd just saved my company $40 million. Rewrite the terms, the managing director said. You have 72 hours. I nodded, professional, calm, inside. I was already calculating if they gave me even 0.5% of what I saved them, I could afford a place with windows that actually opened, a place where Eleanor would have to look up. The data room smelled like burnt coffee and fear. 72 hours to rewrite $40 million worth of acquisition terms, and I was living on protein bars and spite. That's not how we interpret earn-out clauses, the Argent Bio lawyer said, his voice sharp through the conference phone. I pulled up subsection 8.9 on my screen, highlighting the problematic language in red. You wrote revenue recognition upon delivery. Delivery to whom? The customer, the distributor, the shipping dock. Your earn-out triggers are so vague, you could claim victory by delivering to yourselves. Miles shifted beside me, uncomfortable with my directness. But I was past caring about tone. Every ambiguous word was $1 million hole. She's right, our general counsel admitted, though it sounded like it hurt him. The earn-out provisions are unenforceable as written. I created a new document, Red Lines Tracker. Each change got cataloged like evidence. By hour 36, I had 47 critical modifications, each one a small surgery to save the deal. Taryn appeared at my desk at 9:45 that night, her smile too wide. Heard you're rewriting the whole acquisition. Just the terms. Must be nice, getting all that FaceTime with executives. She leaned against my cubicle wall, studying my disaster of a workspace empty energy drink cans, marked up contracts, my sticky note reminders covering every surface. Some of us have been here 5 years without getting into that conference room. Some of us found $40 million worth of problems. She left, but not before taking a photo of my desk. I knew it would circulate. Evidence of the chaos I was creating. Let them talk. I had bigger math to do. The family group chat exploded while I was in hour 48 of my marathon. Eleanor had forwarded a listing, beautiful 4-bedroom in Maple Ridge, perfect for starting a family. The price tag was obscene. The assumption was worse. Janet chimed in. Ava could never afford that unless she marries rich, Patricia. Maybe if she spent less on coffee and more on finding a husband. I screenshotted everything, added it to a folder I'd labeled Fuel. At hour 62, I found it. The smoking gun. Argent Bio's revenue projections assumed a patent that wouldn't be granted for another 18 months. If the patent got rejected, the earn-out targets were fantasy. The seller knew it. They'd buried the patent status in Appendix J of the technical specifications, hoping nobody would connect the dots. I drafted my finding in pure, cold legalese. Then I did something I'd never done before I CC'd the entire executive team. Miles called immediately. What the hell are you doing? Saving the company $40 million. You don't CC the CEO without running it by me first. You would have taken credit. Silence. Then, conference room A, 10 minutes. The C-suite was waiting. My memo was on the screen, the problematic patent language highlighted in yellow. The CFO was doing math on his phone. The general counsel looked pale. How did we miss this? The CEO asked the room. We didn't, I said. I found it. Every head turned. Miles started to speak, but I cut him off. Appendix J, page 212. They reference patent application number US 2024-078432. I cross-referenced it with the USPTO database. Currently in review. Probable rejection based on prior art. Without that patent, their projection model falls apart. The CEO looked at Miles. Did you know about this? I was overseeing. I asked if you knew about this specific issue. Miles's silence was my vindication. Whitaker, the CEO said, rewrite the earn-out to account for patent uncertainty. Make it bulletproof. I worked until 4 in the morning, my fingers cramped, my vision blurring. But every clause I rewrote was a brick in my penthouse foundation. The final memo came to 18 pages of surgical precision. When I submitted it, I added one line at the bottom, analysis completed by Ava Whitaker, Contract specialist, Northbridge Capital Services. No ambiguity about who saved the deal. The family chat pinged while I was finally packing up. Eleanor had sent another photo, someone's daughter, someone's pride and joy, standing in front of a suburban house with a sold sign. "This could be you," she'd written, "if you were more realistic about your life." I looked at my reflection in my laptop screen, hair unwashed, eyes red, coffee stains on my shirt. Then I looked at the memo I'd just sent. $40 million salvaged with my name stamped on every page. "My life is about to get very realistic," I typed back, then deleted it. Let them think I was failing. The view would be better from above. The champagne was Perrier-Jouet, not the cheap stuff we kept for client celebrations. The CEO himself poured it, the bottle sweating expensive condensation onto the mahogany conference table. "To the Argent Bio acquisition." He raised his glass. "Closed at $28 million, $12 million under initial target." Everyone drank. I held my glass but didn't sip. I was doing math. "Exceptional work from the entire team," the CEO continued, his eyes scanning the room. "Led by our legal and contracts departments." Miles stepped forward, ready to claim the victory. But the CFO interrupted. "I want to specifically recognize the patent issue. That discovery alone saved us from a potential lawsuit worth twice the acquisition price." He pulled up an email on his phone. "According to my records, that was identified by Ava Whitaker." The room shifted. Miles's jaw tightened. "Effective immediately," the CEO announced. "Ms. Whitaker is promoted to senior contract strategist. The position comes with a base increase and performance bonus structure tied to deal savings." My phone buzzed. HR email, already in my inbox. The numbers made my hands shake. Base salary $95,000. Bonus potential 2% of documented savings on deals over $10 million. 2% of $12 million. $240,000. I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up from shock. Then I washed my face, reapplied my drugstore lipstick, and walked back into that room like I'd expected this all along. That night, I opened a new account at Chase, named it Skylight Fund. The name felt like a promise. I transferred my entire checking balance, $3,700, and stared at the number. In 6 weeks, when the bonus cleared, that number would have 6 figures. I called Noah Reyes, a real estate broker I'd found on Instagram, his feed full of glass towers and marble lobbies. "I'm looking for something specific," I told him. "Penthouse, floor-to-ceiling windows, private elevator access if possible. Budget, $800,000. Cash offer." His pause told me he was recalculating my worth. "I have several properties. When would you like to start looking?" "Saturday, 7 in the morning." Eleanor called while I was mapping out property listings. "Janet told me you got promoted. Some senior thing. Senior contract strategist. Sounds made up. Anyway, I was thinking you could finally move somewhere decent. There's a nice 2-bedroom in Janet's neighborhood. I'm looking at penthouses." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. You can't afford—" "I have to go. I have listings to review. The first 3 properties were wrong. Good, but wrong. Nice views, but no private entrance. Beautiful kitchens, but no outdoor space. I was paying cash for silence. I wanted perfection. Then Noah drove me to Weston Tower. "This one's been empty for 8 months, he said as his keycard activated the private elevator. "Owner moved to Singapore. Price to sell." The elevator opened directly into the apartment. No hallway, no shared corridor, just straight into 2,900 square feet of emptiness waiting to be filled. The ceiling was 18 feet high, all glass on 3 sides. The city spread out below like a promise kept. I walked to the windows and looked down. Somewhere in that maze of streets was my studio, its brick wall view and radiator rattle. From here, it was invisible. "There's more," Noah said. He led me up a spiral staircase to the private roof deck. 270 degrees of sky, space for a garden, a hot tub, a life that took up room. How much? $750,000. They want a quick sale. I did the math. After taxes on my bonus, down payment, closing costs, I'd have enough. Just barely, but enough. I'll take it. Don't you want to think about it? See more options. I thought about Eleanor's laugh, Miles's attempt to steal credit, the family group chat documenting my supposed failure in real time. I'll wire the earnest money tomorrow. That night, I sat in my studio, eating Chinese takeout from the container. My laptop was open to the purchase agreement. $750,000 for the right to never apologize for my square footage again. My phone lit up. Caleb, texting after 6 months of silence. Heard about your promotion. Dinner Friday. I know a place. I knew what he wanted. Senior title meant marriage material. The kind of woman you could bring to suburban barbecues without shame. Busy, I replied. Closing on a property? 3 dots appeared and disappeared. He was probably trying to figure out what studio apartment I was desperate enough to buy. Let him wonder. Let them all wonder. I signed the purchase agreement at 11:59 that night, my signature sharp and certain. The champagne from the office was still in my bag. I opened it alone, in my studio, toasting to the brick wall and its graffiti wisdom. Dream bigger, I said to the spray-painted letters. Watch me. The email arrived at 8:13 on a Monday morning, right after I'd wired the earnest money. Internal Audit Re Whitaker Risk Solutions, LLC. My coffee turned to acid in my stomach. Taryn had reported me, claimed conflict of interest between my consulting LLC and my position at Northbridge. She'd attached screenshots of my business registration, my LinkedIn update, even the invoice I'd submitted to a startup for weekend work. Miles looked pleased when he summoned me to his office. This is serious. Ava. Outside consulting while handling our deals, legal's involved now. For 3 weeks, they investigated, froze my bonus, put me on administrative review while lawyers combed through every document I'd touched, looking for evidence I'd stolen clients or leaked information. They found nothing because there was nothing. I'd been careful, kept everything separate, never mixed the streams. But careful doesn't matter when you're bleeding money on a penthouse down payment. Eleanor called during the worst of it, her timing impeccable as always. I'm at the hospital, she said. Nothing serious, just my blood pressure. I drove to Maple Ridge in my Honda with the broken air conditioning, watching the suburbs get progressively nicer until I reached the medical center where rich people went to worry about their mortality. She looked small in the hospital bed, but her disappointment was full-sized. Janet came yesterday, she said. Brought the ultrasound photos. That's nice. The nurse asked if I had grandchildren. I had to say no. The monitor beeped her elevated pulse. I watched the numbers, thinking about my own racing heart every time I checked my frozen bank accounts. I'm embarrassing to you, I said. Don't be dramatic. You literally told the book club I was finding myself when they asked why I'm not married. What should I say? My daughter lives in a shoebox and spends Friday nights with spreadsheets. The truth of it sat between us like a third person. She wasn't wrong. I did spend Friday nights with spreadsheets. Saturday nights, too. Every night, calculating if I could still make the closing date without my bonus. Caleb showed up the next day, flowers in hand like we were still together. Your mom called me, he admitted. She's worried about you. She's worried about her reputation. He sat on my one chair while I stood by the window, looking at my brick wall view for what I hoped would be the last month. I bought a house, he said. 4 bedrooms, good schools. Congratulations. Come see it. This weekend. I knew what he was offering, the suburban escape route. The life where I'd host Eleanor's book club and pretend my MBA was just something I did before I found my real purpose making Caleb comfortable. I'm closing on my own place, actually. He laughed. Your mom said you were looking at penthouses. Come on, Ava, be realistic. Realistic. There was that word again, the one that meant shrink yourself to fit the space we've allocated for you. I have to go. Work emergency. The emergency was real. Legal cleared me no conflict of interest, no theft, no violations. But there was a catch. My bonus would be delayed 60 days pending final review. 60 days I didn't have. I sat with Noah in his Tesla, staring at the Weston Tower purchase agreement. "I can push the closing," he offered. "Explain the situation." "No." If I pushed it, I'd lose it. Someone else would swoop in with clean money and no complications. "I'll figure it out." I liquidated everything. My 401k, $30,000 after penalties. Sold my Honda to CarMax for $8,000. Took a cash advance on 3 credit cards. Applied for a hard money bridge loan at 18% interest that made the banker look at me with actual concern. "This is dangerous," he warned. "If that bonus doesn't come through, it will." It had to. The alternative was bankruptcy, and Eleanor's "told you so" echoing forever. The night before my internal review ended, I couldn't sleep. 4:23 in the morning. I was running numbers again. Even with the bridge loan, I was $40,000 short. The owner wouldn't take less. He had backup offers waiting. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from a CEO I'd never met. "Heard you saved Northbridge $12 million on Argent Bio. My company needs that kind of analysis. Consulting contract attached. 50,000, 2-week turnaround. Interested." I read it 3 times. The company was real. The contract was legitimate. The timeline was insane. "Yes," I wrote back. Starting immediately. For 2 weeks, I lived on 4 hours of sleep, analyzing contracts for one company while defending my reputation at another. My studio became a war room of documents and caffeine and determination so pure it felt like medication. When I wired the final closing funds, every penny I had, plus borrowed money, plus future money, my hands shook so hard I could barely type the account numbers. But I typed them anyway, because the alternative was staying small enough for Eleanor to pity, small enough for Caleb to save, small enough to disappear into someone else's life story. The wire confirmation came through at 11:58 that night. I sat on my floor, surrounded by boxes I couldn't afford to move yet, holding the deed to a penthouse I'd bought with leverage and spite. "Congratulations on your new home," Noah texted, with champagne emojis I was too broke to appreciate. Home. $750,000 of proving everyone wrong. Worth every penny I didn't have. My hand shook as I signed the final closing documents. The notary, a woman with perfect nails and practiced indifference, didn't notice. Or maybe she was used to people trembling while committing $750,000 they technically didn't have. "Congratulations, Ms. Whitaker," she said, sliding the keys across the table. Not just keys, a key fob for the private elevator. The weight of it felt like vindication. The bonus finally cleared 2 weeks later. $240,000 after taxes, hitting my account at 3:17 in the morning. I paid off the bridge loan immediately, the 18% interest having eaten $9,000 in just 45 days. Credit cards next. Then I sat in my empty penthouse, on the floor because I couldn't afford furniture yet, and breathed for the first time in months. The consulting check came through the same week. 50,000 that meant I could actually buy a bed. Maybe even a couch that didn't smell like someone else's life. I hired Flair and Fig Events, a company I found on Instagram, their feed full of parties that looked like magazines. "I need Christmas Eve dinner for 10 people, I told the planner, a woman named Simone who wore glasses that cost more than my monthly food budget. Elegant but intimate, traditional but elevated. Budget 15,000. She didn't blink. In her world, 15,000 was a starting point. Theme: revenge, I almost said. Instead, redemption. I spent October furnishing the place strategically. The dining room first a table for 12 in Italian marble that cost more than my entire year's rent at the studio. The living room next, centered around a custom sectional in cream velvet that would show every spill, every flaw, every moment of imperfection. I wanted my mother to be afraid to sit on it. The kitchen was already perfect wolf range. Sub-zero refrigerator, a wine fridge that held 60 bottles. I filled it with wines I Googled Chateau d'Yquem, Screaming Eagle, Romanée Conti, Names that meant nothing to me, but everything to people who kept score. I found the Christmas tree in November, 14 feet tall, a Douglas fir so perfect it looked fake. The tree alone cost $3,000, delivery and installation another $1,000. The decorations hand-blown glass ornaments from some boutique in Soho, another $5,000. You want it lit? The installer asked. Like the fucking sun, I said. 3,000 lights. Programmable. I could control them from my phone, make them pulse with my heartbeat if I wanted. But steady was better. Steady like my hands when I signed documents now. Steady like my voice in meetings. Steady like the number in my bank account. The invitations went out December 1st. Proper cardstock, letterpress, addressed by a calligrapher I found on Etsy. Christmas Eve at Ava's, 7 in the evening, cocktail attire requested, valet parking provided. I didn't include the address. Just, car service will collect you at 6:30. Eleanor called immediately. What is this, Christmas? Where? My new place? You moved when where? You'll see. The family group chat exploded with speculation. Janet thought I was fronting, probably hosting at a restaurant. Patricia assumed I was dating someone rich. Eleanor stayed silent, which meant she was worried. I had custom knives made, engraved with A.W. in script so elaborate it looked like a threat. Crystal candlesticks from Baccarat. A sound system that cost more than most cars, hidden in the ceiling so music came from nowhere and everywhere. The week before Christmas, I had my old studio professionally photographed. Every shameful angle, every water stain, that brick wall view. I had the photos printed on archival paper, mounted in a leather album that cost $400. Evidence of the before, to make the after hit harder. Caleb texted on December 20th. Your mom invited me to Christmas Eve. Should I come? Your choice, I replied. Let him see what realistic actually looked like. December 23rd. I stood in my penthouse, running through the lighting scenes I'd programmed. Candlelight. Northern Lights. Fuck you. I made it. I'd rename that one before the party. Simone arrived with her team at noon on Christmas Eve. They transformed the space into something from a movie about rich people's problems. Garland twisted with copper wire and actual pine cones. Candles in hurricanes that could survive tears. The dining table set with china I'd bought because the pattern reminded me of everything I'd never had, delicate, expensive, requiring careful handling. At 5:45, I put on a dress that cost more than my old monthly rent. Red, because Christmas. Valentino, because I could. I stood at my window, looking down at the city, waiting. My phone buzzed. The car service. First pickup complete. Eleanor and Richard were in a black town car, heading to an address they didn't know, to see a daughter they'd never really seen. I walked to my kitchen, poured myself a glass of the Romanée Conti, $800 a bottle. It tasted like every spreadsheet I'd ever balanced. Every night I'd worked until dawn. Every time they'd laughed at my square footage. The key fob sat on the marble counter. I picked it up, felt its weight again. In 15 minutes, the private elevator would open, and Eleanor would walk into a space that made her colonial look like what it was: safe, predictable, small. I placed the fob on a silver tray by the door. Next to it, the leather album of studio photos. And on top, a single piece of cardstock with calligraphy I'd done myself. From 450 to 2,900. Merry Christmas. The elevator chimed. They were here. The elevator doors opened directly into my foyer, and I watched Eleanor's face cycle through confusion, disbelief, and something that looked like fear. Good evening. The attendant from the lobby had accompanied them up. Ms. Whitaker's penthouse. Richard gripped Eleanor's elbow. She couldn't speak. The 14-foot tree blazed behind me, its 3,000 lights reflected in the marble floors, the glass walls, the copper garland that cost more than their monthly mortgage. Merry Christmas, I said, taking Eleanor's coat. Her mess. The same one she'd worn last year when she was afraid to touch my IKEA furniture. The string quartet I'd hired was playing Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas in the living room. The sound floated through the space like expensive perfume. Behind them, the city spread out in every direction, lights multiplying lights into infinity. This is... Eleanor started, then stopped. Mine, I finished. Champagne. Janet arrived next with her husband, their eyes widening as the elevator revealed the space. Her hand went to her pregnant belly, a protective gesture against whatever was happening here. Ava. She said my name like a question, like she wasn't sure who I was anymore. Patricia and her husband came third, Patricia already filming on her phone before the doors fully opened. The video would be in the family chat within minutes. I was counting on it. Did you how? Patricia managed. I handed her champagne and crystal that sang when you flicked it. Welcome. Please. Make yourselves comfortable. But comfortable was impossible. They moved through the space like tourists in a museum. Eleanor kept touching things, the back of a chair, the edge of the counter, the window like she was checking if they were real. Caleb arrived last, alone, carrying grocery store flowers that looked offensive against the backdrop of Simone's arrangements. Jesus Christ, Ava, he said, which was probably the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. The powder room is down the hall if you need a moment, I offered. The cocktail hour was choreographed. Servers in black moved silently with trays of appetizers I'd chosen, specifically oysters, because Eleanor was allergic to shellfish and would have to decline. Foie gras, because Patricia was suddenly ethical about force-feeding. Truffle everything, because excess tastes better when it's uncomfortable. Richard found his voice by the second drink. This place must cost... Dad, I interrupted. Let's not talk numbers on Christmas. Eleanor gravitated to the photos on the mantel, all of me. Solo, at various stages of closing deals. No family photos. No memories of them. Just evidence of my worth in conference rooms and contract signings. You don't have any pictures of us, she said quietly. I have one. I retrieved the leather album from the side table, handed it to her. She opened it to find the studio photos. Every humiliating angle. The brick wall. The hot plate, the radiator with its peeling paint, and at the back, the screenshot from last year's family chat, Christmas at Ava's, with its 63 laughing reactions. Her face went pale. Dinner is served, Simone announced from the dining room. They sat where I placed them, name cards in calligraphy on paper that cost $12 each. I'd seated Eleanor directly across from me, the length of the marble table between us like years of disappointment made physical. The first course arrived winter soup in bowls so thin you could see your hand through them. The cheap plates from last year were there too. Underneath, a reminder made of ceramic and spite. This is overwhelming, Janet said, trying for normal. How long have you lived here? Since October. You never told us you were moving. Eleanor's voice was accusatory and small. You never asked about my life. Just my marital status. The quartet transitioned to Silent Night. Ironic, since the silence at the table was louder than music. Caleb tried next. The view is incredible. It is, I agreed. You can't see a single brick wall. The main course duck with pomegranate, chosen because it's what rich people eat when they want to seem cultured, arrived on plates that cost more than most people's car payments. Patricia's husband, always the accountant, couldn't help himself. The mortgage on this place must be... There isn't one, I said. I paid cash. Eleanor's fork clattered against her plate. That's impossible, she breathed. You had student loans. You lived in that place. I lived there because every dollar went to getting here. You taught me that appearances matter. I just decided which appearance mattered most. Richard cleared his throat. How? I saved Northbridge $40 million on a single deal. They were grateful. $40 million. Janet's voice pitched high. The Argent Bio acquisition. You can Google it. My name's in the SEC filing. They would Google it. They'd all Google it later, in their guest bathrooms and Tesla rides home, finding my name in black and white next to numbers that meant I'd never need their approval again. Dessert was a croquembouche, a tower of cream puffs held together with caramel. So elaborate it required 2 servers to carry. At its base, a chocolate placard from 450 SQFT to 2900. This feels hostile, Eleanor said quietly. No, I corrected. Last year was hostile. This is just accurate. The candles flickered in their baccarat hurricanes. The city glittered beyond the windows. The string quartet played "O Holy Night," while my family sat in chairs they were afraid to shift in, eating food they couldn't pronounce, realizing that the daughter they'd pitied had purchased their silence. "Shall we open presents?" I asked, standing. "They're in the living room. Under the tree you can actually see." The presents under the tree were props, empty boxes wrapped in paper that cost $40 a roll. But the real gift was in the envelope I handed to Eleanor and Richard as everyone settled into the cream velvet sectional they were afraid to touch. "What's this?" Eleanor asked. "Open it." Inside the deed to my penthouse, the closing statement showing the full cash purchase, the bank statement showing my 7-figure bonus, and the email from Northbridge's CEO thanking me for saving the Argent Bio deal. Proof. Documented and undeniable. Eleanor's hands trembled as she read. Richard leaned over, his face changing as he processed the numbers. "I used to think silence meant being good," I said, standing by the window. The city spread below me like conquered territory. Good daughter. Good wife someday. Good at being small enough to fit in the space you gave me. I turned to face them. The tree lights caught on the Valentino dress, on the Cartier watch I'd bought myself last week, on the keys to a life they'd never imagined I could afford. But you taught me something last Christmas, when you laughed at my studio, my little tree, my attempt at hosting family. You taught me that love in this family is conditional. It depends on square footage, on marriage certificates, on meeting your definition of success. That's not, Eleanor started. Mom, you sent me 43 listings for suburban houses I should buy with a husband I don't have. You told your book club I was finding myself at 32. You took photos of my failure and shared them for entertainment. I picked up the key fob from the silver tray, felt its weight one more time. So I found myself. Turns out I'm someone who can afford a penthouse. Someone who saves companies $40 million before breakfast. Someone who doesn't need your approval because I can buy my own. Janet was crying silently, her mascara leaving perfect black tracks. Patricia had stopped filming. Caleb sat frozen, those grocery store flowers wilting in the heat of revelation. "This is cruel," Eleanor whispered. "No, this is earned. Every square foot paid for with nights I didn't sleep, deals I saved, bonuses I negotiated while you were planning my imaginary wedding." I pressed a button on my phone. The lights shifted to the Northern Lights setting, greens and purples washing across the walls like the aurora borealis had been domesticated and hung from my ceiling. You want to know the best part? I walked to the marble dining table, ran my hand along its perfect edge. I bought all of this every inch, every view, every piece of crystal not because I wanted it. I bought it because you taught me that in this family. Square footage equals value, and I wanted to be valuable enough that you'd finally stop trying to fix me. The silence stretched, filled with string quartet music and the distant sound of the city below. Richard spoke first. "We just wanted you to be happy." "No, you wanted me to be normal. There's a difference." Eleanor stood, unsteady. "I think we should go." "The cars are waiting downstairs," I said. "The drivers have your addresses." They gathered their coats in movements that looked like grief. Eleanor stopped at the elevator, turned back. "This isn't you," she said. "You're right. This is who I became while you were laughing at who I was." The elevator doors closed on their faces, confused, hurt, smaller than I'd ever seen them. Caleb lingered, the last to leave. "You won," he said. "Did I?" He gestured at the empty penthouse, the tree no one would see, the presents that were just boxes. "What happens tomorrow, when you're alone in all this space?" "The same thing that happened when I was alone in 450 square feet, except with better views." After he left, I stood in my silent kingdom. The string quartet had packed up. Simone's team had cleared everything. Just me and 2,900 square feet of proof. I walked to the tree, touched one of the $5,000 ornaments. Below, the city went on living, unaware that somewhere above them, a woman had purchased her revenge with compound interest. My phone buzzed. The family group chat. Janet had posted a photo not of my penthouse, but of last year's Christmas, my tiny tree barely visible, my smile forced and brittle, missing simpler times. She'd written. I looked at the photo, then at my reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. Designer dress, designer life, designer loneliness that at least had marble countertops. I placed the key fob in the center of the dining table, where it caught the light like a diamond, or a tear, depending on the angle. The penthouse was silent except for the hum of central air, conditioning space that would never quite feel like home, but it felt like something better proof that when they made me feel small, I didn't shrink. I expanded, all the way to the ceiling. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below so we can connect. Please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts about Ava's journey. What would you have done in her place? Let me know in the comments.